Duck Hunt. It was one of the most popular games around when it was new. Not just because it was one of the first games on the NES, but because it was controlled using a different controller. Most games on the NES were controlled using the regular NES controller. And most games around this time were just controlled using whatever controller they came with. But Duck Hunt was controlled using the NES Zapper, a way to point at the screen and shoot things on the screen. I have the orange one here, and there's also a gray one, which released before this. It was changed to be orange later on to look less like a gun. Yeah, instead of just an orange tip, just make most of the Zapper orange. Why not? But to be honest, I kind of prefer the orange one. It's a lot more iconic of the two. If you want to play Duck Hunt nowadays, you'll run into a very small problem. You won't be able to play the game. Now, it's not because the game doesn't work at all. This copy works perfectly fine. But the problem is modern televisions. If you plug in the game in your NES, plug it into your modern television, and try to aim at the screen, no matter how good your aim is, you'll never land a hit. That's because the way the light gun works for detecting when it's hitting an object. Basically, it makes the screen black, and then on certain frames, makes shootable objects white squares. And then the gun relays that information back to the console to inform it what frame it detected a white square on to reward a hit. But newer TVs, they just have a delay. So because of that delay, you'll never be able to land a hit. So the only way to play Duck Hunt nowadays is on a CRT. Duck Hunt. You don't know how to play Duck Hunt? Well, let me show you. This is game A, called One Duck. Now, would you believe me that there's only one duck that appears in this mode? There he is! And there he goes. And your companion dog grabs your catch. Boom, boom, and boom. Like I said, you get 3 shots, shoot 1 duck. It's a score-based game, and there's probably a lot of people that go for high scores, but for me, I just kind of like shooting stuff on the screen. Now, the main challenge from this game really comes from just how far away from the screen you gotta shoot. Because if you just want to go right up against the screen, you can just cheat and get it every time. So, I feel like it's a good balance where you could sit farther back from the screen and still, aim and have it be a bit of a challenge, but not too far back, so your aim is still reliable, where if you're still dead on it, you're always getting the shot. But that's game A. What is game B? Well, game B is called Two Duck. So, what happens in Two Ducks? Well, would you believe me that there's 2 ducks in this mode? Here they come. Boom and boom. You shoot them both. Same thing, except 2 ducks. You still only get 3 shots. So 1 missed, and boom. That's it. Now, there is another mode in this called clay shooting, or game 3. Never mind, this is Broken Super Mario Brothers. This happens with a lot of NES games. I don't know why the Mario portion of it's broken. Really gotta clean up the console. But, head over to game C, clay shooting. This one is a really ambitious, 3D environment. And 2 frisbees or clay pigeons, or I don't know the exact name for them. I think they're clay pigeons. And you just shoot them. Same thing, but this one's probably the hardest out of the 3 modes, mainly because the objects, as they go on, they start getting smaller and smaller, and they become a little harder to hit. And this one only has the 2 clay pigeons every single time. There's no 1 clay pigeon mode, but I'm perfectly fine with that, mainly because I always prefer playing like 2 ducks anyways. And that's pretty much it. That's Duck Hunt. That's all it has to offer, but it's all it really needs to offer. For a 1980s game on the NES, for using a very unique control scheme, there's almost like infinite replayability in this game. Now, could you sit down and play this for 8 hours a day? Probably not. But anytime you pick it up and you just want to play it for a couple minutes or even just 20 minutes, it's fun every single time. That's Duck Hunt. It's a very simple game, but it's very replayable. And that's pretty much the NES Zapper as well. There's not much else to it. Man, I forgot about Hogan's Alley.